It's your boy Ty back here with another video, and in this video today, guys, we are going to be making a tier list of every single Ruby that we do have in NBA 2K24 MyTEAM. From good to bad, every single one. If I did leave anybody off, I do want to apologize, but I tried to hit on every single one of them. Now, we're going to try to get through this thing in like, I don't know, 20 or so minutes, and we have over 100 guys to get through. So, if it feels like a speed run, guys, I'm sorry, but I don't want to spend, a minute on each and every one of these players. Otherwise, this tier list would take me 2 hours to do. Started off with Ruby Aaron Gordon. He's fine for a Series 1 card. He's just, in my opinion, not worth getting. Alonzo Mourning up next. When we talk about Rubies, in my opinion, he's an A tier caliber Ruby. I don't necessarily think Alonzo Mourning, is the best center in the game. But is he a center that can go out there and compete against the Shaqs, the Wilts of the world? Absolutely. Amari Stoudemire up next. I'm going to throw him at B tier. I mean, with the duo, he becomes a lot better. The problem is, for that duo, you have to run Steve Nash. And I am not very high on Steve Nash in general. Andre Iguodala up next. In my opinion, one of the most complete Rubies in the entire game. You look at his badge, it's just so good. My whole thing with Andre Iguodala is offensively, all he can be is basically that spot-up shooter. Sure, he can attack the rim decently, but his playmaking skills are not great. Andrew Wiggins up next, 6'7", can make plays at that 3. I'm going to throw him at B tier. I'm just not the biggest fan of the card. Anthony Edwards, C tier. I'm sorry, Ant, but your time is not now in my team. I don't know when they're going to make a good Ant card. It's just not now. Tubby Walker up next. I'm going to go B tier with Tubby Walker. Mr. Tubster is fine for a salary cap reward. Is he great? Is he a card I'd recommend using if it's not in salary cap? No. Not a big fan of Tubby Walker in my team. Austin Reeves up next. I'm going to throw him in B tier. I do like Austin Reeves more than Anthony Edwards, and it's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. Austin Reeves can give you that spark offensively, whereas Ant is just very mediocre. Bojan Bogdanovic kind of stinks. I'm actually going to throw him in D tier. I'm just really not a fan of this card. Bradley Beal, also going to throw him in D tier. Look, I'm not going to say Bradley Beal is unusable because I don't think he's quite that bad, but compared to Ant, he's not very good. Honestly, guys, Brent Barry, I'm going to say it, he's slept on, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say I love Brent Barry, but he is slept on, and when I do use this card in, let's say, salary cap, he does a lot for me. Now, his release, I'll say it's quick. It's just kind of hard to get used to because it is way different than any basically other release that we do have in my team. Bruce Bowen, obviously an easy addition into A tier. Bruce Bowen, one of my favorite overall shooting guards to use as far as rewards that we did get. Is he, the best shooting guard in the game? No, but is he one of the best 3-and-D guys in my team? Absolutely. Cam Johnson up next. I'd be lying to say I've used this card. Cam Johnson did have a smooth release last year, so I will put him at B tier. But again, I've not used Cam Johnson yet this year, so it's basically impossible for me to give you guys an accurate representation. Cam Whitmore up next. I'm going to throw him in A tier. I really am a fan of Cam Whitmore in general. Do I think he's the best small forward in the game? No, but for a free card, he was absolutely incredible for his specific time. CP3 up next. I'm going to throw him in A tier. I've used a lot of point guards this year, and on my no money spent, CP3 is one of the favorites that I have used because offensively, he's not great, but he was good enough to at least be able to make that occasional play. And defensively, I know he's only 6 feet tall, but he could get steals at a very high rate and at least competed and tried on that end of the court. I do think A tier is where Chris Paul belongs when it comes down to Rubies. CJ McCollum up next. I'm going to throw him in C tier. Not a card I've used, but we're really seeing a lot of. He's probably fine. I'm going C tier though. Daniel Gafford up next. He kind of stinks. I'm going to go D tier with Daniel Gafford. I mean, he's a Ruby, but what does Daniel Gafford really give you on the court? That's the question I would encourage you guys to ask yourselves before locking in a card like this. What does he really provide for you and your specific squad? If he provides something you want, then go ahead and get him, but he is not good for me in my team. Here's the problem with Danny Granger. This release is not good. The Haywood Highsmith release, once upon a time, was absolutely elite. It's just not anymore. And I'm sorry, Danny Granger, but you're going to go in C tier. Not a card I definitely do love. I'm going to put Darius Garland in B tier. Some people really like Darius Garland, and I get it because offensively, he is absolutely magnificent, absolutely outstanding. The problem is there is the defensive end of the court. and I'm just not super high on Darius Garland on that end of the floor. So that's why he's going to B tier. Can still make a lot of plays for you guys. Daryl Griffith up next. C tier, I think, is where he belongs. Look, I'm not going to sit here and hype up Daryl Griffith. If you want to run the card, do what you got to do. He's just not a card that I'd ever really even consider running. Look, I'm going to say it like this. If you and Daryl Griffith, if you spent your tokens on him for a, let's say, Brandon Roy, that's the only reason you should have spent your tokens on him. That's just the truth, right? If you wanted, to grind for Brandon Roy, right? Or if you got Brandon Roy, had to get Daryl Griffith along the way, but he's not very good. I'm not going to lie, David Wesley kind of stinks. That Dwayne Wade base, you're 6 feet tall. You're going to go in D tier. I really do not like David Wesley at all. And maybe I'm being way too hard on the card. But when I first looked at David Wesley, I was like, you know what? Okay, maybe this Dwayne Wade release this year will be good. Because outside of that, he's horrible defensively. Okay? He's 6 feet tall. So if you're not going to have a cheesy release, what are you really doing for me on the court? Honestly, if you're 6 feet tall and you don't have a good release and you're defensively horrible, what are you providing on the court? That's the big question I have for David Wesley that I've really never found the answer to. That's why he is where he is at D tier. Not F tier, because you can use him in certain situations and he can be useful, but card is not very good. De'Aaron Fox up next. I'm going to throw Fox in A tier. I don't have De'Aaron Fox, and ever since I've unlocked all-time domination, I've been grinding that instead of current domination. So, am I going to get De'Aaron Fox soon? No. I mean, probably some point this season, once I do, finish everything for the Shay. Once I do get Wilt, I might start eventually grinding domination, but it's not high on my agenda list. He's fine for, a rim-running type of point guard. His release is decently quick. It's just, in my opinion, somewhat hard to time. That's why De'Aaron Fox is A tier. I do like the card. DeAndre Ayton, I'm throwing at B tier. I don't mind Ayton at all. Player build's good. Release, honestly, isn't that bad. The reason I've really used Ayton is because the Suns used to be the best team for me in play now. That's why I used Ayton a lot, and I like using the card in general. DeJounte Murray, C tier, just not a great card in my team. He's fine. You can use him. He's just, in my opinion, a card that leaves something to be desired. If you had point guard eligibility, I might sit here and talk about him a little more, but no point guard eligibility on the card either. How am I supposed to sit here and gas him? Boogie Cousins up next, B tier. Boogie Cousins gets absolutely mashed on the interior. Now, I will say this. In salary cap, he's oftentimes cheap, and so I'll run him in salary cap. And he's fine because he can stretch the court. His player model is actually good. I'm not saying he's good defensively because he's not. But his player model is good enough to run. And I don't mind the card in general. Desmond Bane at this stage, I'm still going to go A tier. If you need a guy that can run your offense, Desmond Bane can do that. Release is a little slow, but super easy to time, easy to grind. And he's got a really high 3-ball. I do think Desmond Bane is deserving of A tier in my team. Next up, guys, Devin Booker. I'm not going to lie. Promo Devin Booker, I'm going to throw it A tier as well. He's a different shooting guard than a guy like Bruce Bowen, right? Than a guy like Brent Berry. Because those guys in Bruce Bowen, in Brent Berry, they're going to give you more defense. Devin Booker is going to be that better primary. Bo Handler has a nice fade. He's going to do more for you on the offensive end of the court. Devin Vassell, C tier, not super high on him. Dylan Brooks, a way different card, but I'm going to put him at A tier. I really do respect Dylan Brooks, especially for what he gives you on that defensive end of the court. A lot of people probably don't love Dylan Brooks in my team, but defensively, he's magnificent, and nobody can argue against that. On the defensive end of the court, there are a few guys, not very many, in my team that can do better than him defensively. Sabonis, I mean, look, I know you're tall, I know you're lengthy. I guess I'll give you I don't know. I really want to put him in C tier. Sabonis in my team. I know he's super tall, but that's about all he gives you on the court, to be honest. David Thompson up next. You kind of stink too. I'm going to throw you a D tier. I really thought David Thompson could be good because I shot around with him. I'm like, he has a decent release. And then 2K proceeded to give him a horrible 3-ball. I'm sorry. I was actually close to being able to hype him up, but he's just not good. Latrell Sprewell, I'm going to go B tier. He's going to defend. He's actually got a smooth release. His movement is really bad on the court, though. The problem is I want to put Latrell Sprewell at A tier. Okay, I'm going to move some people around. Just because I feel like I have to if I want to put Latrell at B tier. I'm going to do this. And so I'm only leaving the elite of the elite at the shooting guard position. Desmond Bane, Bruce Bowen at A tier. I just feel like, a guy, let's say, Just gonna throw out names: Latrell Sprewell and Dylan Brooks. That's basically a pick'em. I can't be higher on Dylan Brooks than Latrell Sprewell. That just does not sit right for me. Jamal Wilkes up next. This guy's a garbage man, D tier. I'm sorry, Jamal Wilkes. You stink in my team. Chris Moreland up next. He's gonna shoot the ball well. It doesn't give you enough defensively to be A tier. I think he does. I mean, if you look at Chris Moreland's 3-ball, and his defense really is not that bad. His height's not bad. I think he does enough to stay at A tier. If you need a pure sharp in my team, Chris Moreland isn't the worst you can do. Again, do I recommend getting him? No, but he's just fine. Sar Thompson up next. I'm not super high on him. Some people like him. I'm throwing him at C tier. If his 3-ball was a little higher, maybe I'd hype him up a little more. But for me, he doesn't fit what I need or what I'm wanting out of a shooting guard. So that's why he is going to be at C tier. Juwan Howard stinks. DBG pulled this guy and was like, yeah, Ty, guess who I pulled? An absolute garbage man. Juwan Howard is horrible in my team. Can't shoot. What does he really do well on the court? I'll sit here and wait. Maybe attack the rim, and that's it. He is D tier at max, in my opinion. Connie Hawkins up next. Another card I wish 2K gave a higher 3-ball. This card's not horrible. I guess, you know, I'm still gonna go C tier though. I'm not trying to sit here and hate on the card, but when it comes down to it, I just don't think he gives you a ton on the court. Rudy Tomjanovich up next is not bad. When you do Evo him, I mean, he becomes really, really solid. I think B tier still is that right spot for him. I don't think he does quite enough to be at that A tier level. Zach Randolph up next. I'm going to go C tier. I tried using this card and he was not good for me. Maybe you guys will use him and have some success with them. Zebo for me stinks in my team. Jermaine O'Neal up next. I don't mind Jermaine. I'm actually going to put him at A tier. A lot of people are going to disagree with this. I love Jermaine's player model, player build. I love the fact that he has the ability to shoot the ball decently. I'm not saying he's going to be a lights out shooter because he's not, but he's going to shoot it decent enough to hold it down at A tier. And the best part about Jermaine O'Neal is his player model, right? That player build is something special in my team. Serge Ibaka up next. A tier, borderline S tier. I'm actually going to throw Serge at S tier as our first S tier card. You want to talk about a complete big in my team. Serge Ibaka is exactly that. Is he perfect? No. But he's not as good as Anthony Davis. He's not going to be as good as Shaq. But he is going to go out there and compete against those top guys. And for that, I got to respect Serge and put him at S tier in general. Brook Lopez, C tier. Look, Brook has an incredible player build. He's going to compete defensively. His release is just so bad. I mean, I had to use it in play now because I used the Bucks. But let me tell you guys, that release is not something I'd ever wish anybody watching this video even had to use. It is that bad in my team. Channing Frye up next, B tier. Look, Channing Frye, he's... how do I say it, guys? Channing Frye. It's pretty simple, guys. With Channing Frye, he's going to shoot the ball well, but defensively, man, he is not good. And so is he similar to Boogie Cousins? Somewhat, right? Somewhat similar to Boogie Cousins in that where they're going to stretch the court, but defensively are an absolute liability. JaVale McGee, I'm going to throw him at C tier. He can compete defensively, but offensively, again, doesn't give you the ability to stretch the court. I don't think I can go any higher than C tier with Mr. JaVale McGee. Chris Morris up next. Haven't used him. I think he's going to be A tier, though. Again, I've not used Chris Morris, but he has a good 6'8 frame. I think the card's going to be solid enough. But A tier is as high as I think I can go with the card in general. Eddie Johnson up next. I'm going to go A tier with Eddie Johnson as well. I do think Chris Morris is going to be, when I get the card, better than a guy like Eddie Johnson. But I do think both cards are A tier. I think when you get them, they're going to be serviceable enough at that shooting guard position. Do I wish, they were Ammies? Absolutely. But you got to take what you can get. Cliff Robinson, I think, is going to be S tier. I think he is going to be our best overall reward that we do see this season. Obviously, that's not Shea. That's not Wilt. He is just absolutely fantastic. And how do you get Cliff Robinson? I do believe he is clutch time online. Card's so good in my team, though. I'm not going to sit here and ever slander Cliff Robinson. Mike Conley, you stink. If you don't trust me, go shoot in 2KU at Mike Conley. He stinks. I wish he was better, but, I mean, he's not. Bob Love up next. Bob Love plays decent defense. He is deserving of A tier. Card isn't necessarily a card I'd be like, yeah, go grind for Bob Love. He is going to be absolutely elite, but he can compete decently. And overall, as a card, I don't mind Bob Love. I really don't. And again, we'll have to see again when I get him what his release is like, a lot of those types of things. But I'm not super stoked, not super excited to get Bob Love. He's just kind of a defensive type of card. Raymond Felton, I guess I'll throw you a C tier. You're better than Mike Conley, but man, you leave a lot to be desired. Phil Jackson, I think is going to be a sleeper of the season. I'm going to throw him at A tier. Not very many people are talking about Phil Jackson. Why? Because he's only 6'8". But I think at that power forward position, he's going to be absolutely elite. I'm not necessarily excited to get tokens and get Phil Jackson, but I'm telling you guys, if you get Phil Jackson, I think he could play for you guys. Now, the problem is, if you get Phil Jackson, you're probably going for SGA. Otherwise, I'd recommend saving your tokens, and I just don't know if he plays in that type of squad. Leon up next. Gameplay of E coming today, so we'll see what the card ultimately gets into, is like. But I think E is fine in my team. From top to bottom, he has good height, gonna shoot the ball well. I like what E can give, not only you guys right now, but just in the future too, right? If you eventually have to move him to that power forward position, still think he's going to be fine there as well. I'm really decently high on E coming into today. I'm just hoping the gameplay with him goes really well. Next up, guys, Jose Calderon. I'd be lying to say I've even looked at his stats. I think I have, but I don't really remember him. I'm gonna throw him a B tier. He's probably fine. Dan Marley, 3-and-D player in my team. You know what you're getting. A tier for Dan. Again, you know exactly what you're getting. Christian Laettner kind of stinks. He's going to go C tier for me. He's your Ascension reward. Just not great as Christian Laettner, to be honest with you guys. Just nothing really that stands out. Hornacek going to shoot the ball well. That's it. I'm going to go B tier. I do think Brent Berry's going to be better than him. Maybe I'll be wrong, but as it stands right now, give me Brent Berry over a guy like Jeff Hornacek. Derek Anderson up next. I'm going to take HTB's word for it and put him at A tier. HTB said Derek Anderson was absolutely elite. So we'll see. Again, I've not used Derek Anderson because I don't have the card. I do believe he's in either the Tim Duncan or Melo set. But again, not worth locking in. If you get him, then maybe use him, but not worth ever really looking at. Deadlift strength with the duo is fine. Without the duo, I think B tier is as high as I can go. He is going to shoot the ball well, but outside of that, defensively, not going to be great. And a lot of these cards, a lot of these players truly are just a little limited. I'm not trying to sit here and slander anybody, but they are just limited in their overall ability. Joe Smith, 6'10", going to play decent defense. I'm going to go A tier with Joe Smith. I think from top to bottom, he is deserving of that. Do I love Joe Smith? He's fine. Not a card I'm necessarily going to ever pick up, though. Petrie up next. I mean, he's lengthy. I guess I'll give him B tier. I just am not in love with that Dwayne Wade base this year. A lot of people might like it. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I'll go B tier with the card. Rondo, you stink, D tier. Sidney Moncrief is decent, especially in the defensive end of the court. I'm going to go A tier with Sidney Moncrief. Really good defensively. Has a great release, so you're going to be able to agree with it. A tier is where Sidney Moncrief does belong. Baron Davis up next. A tier for Baron Davis. A lot of people ask me, Ty, should I buy Baron Davis? No, I wouldn't buy him. He was able, you were able to get Baron Davis for free. At least I got him for free. Maybe, I think the reason I got Baron Davis for free was because I grinded out those equal chance packs and I was lucky enough to pull with Baron. But still, I wouldn't recommend buying Baron Davis. Just get Gary Payton, to be honest. Patty Mills, D tier. What do you want me to say about Patty Mills? I'm not going to sit here and hype up the card. If you want somebody to hype up Patty Mills, find somebody else, because that is not going to be me in my team. First F tier card, Calvin Murphy. 5'9", can't shoot. What do you want me to say about him? 5'9", can't shoot. Not going to hype him up. Boris Diaw up next. Boris Diaw is really solid all the way around. I'm throwing him at A tier. Tell me what Boris Diaw can't do in my team. I'll wait. The card can do it all at every single level. Can shoot, can play defense, can make plays. A tier is where Big Boris belongs. Bobby Jones, I'm going to go C tier just for the sole fact that he can't shoot. People are going to be like, oh, Ty, but Bobby Jones is an elite defensive player. I get that, and I agree with you on that. But outside of that, he just doesn't do a whole lot for you guys. Derrick Jones Jr. up next. I don't mind him. B tier. He's just an all-around small forward in my team. He's not as good as he was last year. Last year, Derrick Jones Jr. had like a cheesy good release. It was one of the honestly best releases in my team. This year, just not quite as good. George Gervin, I'm going to go B tier. He's fine. Pretty similar to Latrell's pretty well. Latrell is going to shoot the ball better. Gerald Wallace is going to be a little longer. Basically a pick 'em. Giannis Antetokounmpo, still A tier. I mean, Giannis is going to Giannis. Giannis is going to be Giannis for as long as you want to play him for. Thing is, he's going to struggle to shoot. 2K has patched shooting, and it's made it somewhat harder. And that's the whole thing with Giannis. Giannis still is going to play great defense. It was just somewhat easy to shoot with Giannis earlier in the year, and it's just gotten a lot harder. Isaiah Ryder, I'm not a fan of him. I know you might have him as a free reward. He's not a free reward I'd recommend using. I'm just giving you guys the honest opinion. He's basically got all the LeBron SIGs, and LeBron SIGs this year aren't that good. Jabari Smith Jr., I'm going to throw him in B tier, right with Boogie Cousins, right with Channing Frye. Again, another stretch big that defensively is going to absolutely struggle. Jack Sikma, I'm going to throw him in B tier as well. Different than Jabari Smith Jr. Jabari Smith Jr. on the perimeter is going to be way better. Jack Sikma is going to bang on the interior a little bit better. Really is preference based between those two guys. I mean, use whoever you have success with. I will say Sigma's 72 3-ball feels way better than it should. I'm just going to throw out that fact because when I shoot with Sigma, I know it's going in every single time. Brunson up next. Brunson's going to go in C tier, just undersized, but he does have a smooth release. Brunson always, I feel like in 2K, ever since I used him last year in my league, I've had some respect for the card. Jalen Green, C tier, undersized for the shooting guard position. I'm grossed out by Jalen Green. If you guys want to run Jalen Green, do what you got to do. I'm just not going to sit here and stand up for the card. Jalen Williams, undersized small forward, C tier. Again, I haven't used his release really this year. Last year, it was not great. So that's something, again, to look at, but I'm just not going to sit here and hype up a card that I don't think is great. Jaren Jackson Jr., I'm going A tier. Here's the deal for Jaren. He's only 6'10", but his player model, player build makes it feel like he's way taller than that. And outside of that, I mean, what can he not do? Can stretch the court, gets good animations. I like the card in my team. Jason Kidd up next. Jason Kidd's going all the way up to A tier. I really rate Jason Kidd highly. The thing about Jason Kidd is he is going to play great defense, knock down open shots, and is he a primary ball handler? Probably not, but that's okay. You don't need him to be that primary. As long as you're okay with running your offense through whoever your shooting guard is, Jason Kidd is that perfect point guard in my team. Jeremy Grant, really solid 3-and-D option. I think at this stage, though, I'm going to go B tier. He's fine. Jerry Lucas, decent stretch for that power forward position. Defensively, though, just not great. I think I'm going to throw him right there with Amari Stoudemire. They're not the same cards, but, I mean, I do think they're on this similar type of level. Joakim Noah up next. I know he's an interior big, but I think A tier is where he belongs, right? When you look at interior bigs, name a better one at that Ruby tier than Joakim Noah. I think you're going to struggle to do so a little bit. Joakim Noah is so good in my team. Use him in salary cap and I had a lot of success with him. Joel Embiid, I'm going to go B tier. Yes, I do like Joakim Noah over Joel Embiid. That's my personal preference. You guys might disagree with me on that, but that is where I'm ranking those two cards at those specific tiers. John Collins up next. He's not very good. I'm going to go C tier. Can shoot the ball, stretch court a little bit, but that's about it. John Starks, wherever Jason Kidd is, that's where John Starks has to be. Not the same cards, but very similar. Starks has a better release. I do think John Starks is really solid still to this day in my team. John Stockton, C tier. Don't love the card. Julius Randle, have him on my no money spent. I'm trying to get comfortable using him. Is he B or is he A tier or B tier? That's the big question mark. And I think I've got to put him at A tier. I think I do, right? He just, in my opinion, is going to give you guys a little bit more than some of the cards at B tier. Not perfect, but definitely a card you can use and have success with. Karl Malone, I'm going to throw a B tier. I have been using him in salary cap because he's super cheap and he's fine. He's just, in my opinion, a Julius Randle that can't shoot nearly as well. Chris Middleton, C tier. He's fine. I just say I've used him plenty and plenty now and he's just not outstanding. Kobe up next, A tier. Promo, it's crazy that promo Kobe is still A tier, but he is. Good, smooth release, can play at a very high level. I have no issues with Kobe in my team. Kyle Korver, you guys might think I'm going S tier. No, A tier is where he belongs. He is going to shoot the ball well, so for that, I respect him, but A tier is as high as I can go. Kyle Lowry up next. I mean, C tier, I guess. If you're using Kyle Lowry, though, something is not adding up to me. He's just not that next level of good. Marcus Aldridge, he stinks. I'm sorry, LaMarcus. I'm going to throw you a D tier. Every time I play against LaMarcus Aldridge, I laugh at my opponent because LaMarcus Aldridge is that bad in my team. Lamar Odom, A tier, 100% A tier. Really solid overall card. There's nothing that Lamar Odom does bad in my team. He just doesn't do anything at an elite level. Larry Johnson, D tier. Card really does stink in my team. Lowry Lauri Markkanen, I'm going to throw him at B tier for this stage. Look, I know he's long, I know he's lengthy, but that's about all he gives you. I know he can stretch the court, but just not that super high on the card. Malcolm Brogdon up next, C tier. Supposedly has a really good release. I'm just not that fond of it like some other people really like Malcolm Brogdon's release. I'm just not that high on it. ML Carr up next. I think at this stage I gotta go B tier. I do like Bruce Bowen more than him. I like Iggy more than him. So for that, gotta go B tier. Muggsy Bogues sadly is F tier. I'm sorry, if you're 5'3", you've just sadly got to go in F tier. Miles Turner up next, B tier, right there with Joel Embiid. A fine center you guys can use. I just think there are overall better options at this stage. Vooch, C tier. No, he's gonna stretch the court for you, but outside of that, what else does he give you? OG Anunoby, look at his stats, look at his badges. At this stage, I'm throwing him into B tier. I just don't think he's that elite level to put him any higher. Banchero up next, I'm throwing him at B tier as well. He is really definitely not super expensive, so you can use him, have some success with him. I just don't necessarily love Banchero at this stage of my team. Does have a really solid player build though. Next, Patrick Ewing. What do you want me to say? He's D tier. Patrick Ewing stinks. Paul Pierce up next, C tier. He's fine. You can use him. I'm just not in love with the card. Richard Hamilton, he is really solid. Really solid 3-and-D option at the shooting guard position. I'm going B tier though at that. Ron Artest, B tier as well. I do think it's preference between Ron Artest and Iggy. I like Iggy more. Gonna put Iggy at A tier. Ron Artest is a really solid option though. Gobert, C tier. Gobert is super long, super lengthy, but outside of that, doesn't give you much on the court. Russell Westbrook, C tier. I remember when this Series 1 Russ came out and everybody's like, man, Russ is going to run the game just like last year. Man, it's a rude awakening for everybody that had that mindset. Because Russell Westbrook isn't nearly as good as he was last year. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. Sam Miro, I didn't even grind for him. He's so bad. His release is so baited. He is going at D tier. Steven Jackson, C tier. I'm sorry, Steven Jackson. When you came out, I thought you had potential to be really, really good in my team. The problem is you're just not. Again, I wanted you to be good. I thought you were going to be good. The problem is you're just not. Your release is kind of gross. Steve Francis up next was a free available card. I'm going to go B tier with Steve Francis. I don't have a problem with Francis. I just don't think he's that next level A tier good. If you want to run Steve Francis, you can have a lot of success with him. I just personally think B tier is ultimately where the card does belong. Steve Nash, man. I'm going to throw him at C tier. But I did a gameplay or a video on Steve Nash as well as Amari Stoudemire because they came out, they had a duo, it looked really solid. And man, let me tell you, I was horrible with Steve Nash. I don't know if it was because of the shooting patch. I don't know what it is. But Amari Stoudemire honestly wasn't that bad. But I basically said the duo was unusable because of Steve Nash and how bad he was in that game. Terry Rozier, undersized. I'm going to go D tier. I really liked Terry Rozier last year, and I loved his release. Could shoot the ball well. This year, he's fine probably, but I'm not going to recommend using him. Thurl Bailey up next. I'm going to go B tier with Thurl. Problem with Thurl is his 3-ball. It really is that simple. If Thurl had a better 3-ball, I would probably be sitting here hyping the card up. Problem is his 3-ball is too low, man. It's too low for me to sit there and gas it. I'm not going to do that today. Tim Hardaway up next. If you got him, he's fine. C tier. Definitely at least usable because he can shoot the ball. Movement-wise, isn't horrible. I don't necessarily, look, I didn't get Tim Hardaway, so 2K kind of hoed me, but if you did get Tim, he can still play for you. Do I recommend running him as like your best point guard? No, but he absolutely still can play. Tim Hardaway Jr. up next, not a card I recommend. C tier is where I'm going to put him. He's fine. A lot of these Series 1 cards, I'm not going to make the case for because they're too expensive for how good they are. And you got to lock in that MT. Just don't recommend it. Wally Szczerbiak up last. I'm going to throw him at B tier. Used him the other day and he was fine. But when I used Wally, it wasn't like, man, I really do like this card and I really rate him highly. He was fine, but just not a card that I'd recommend the average person picky or the average person using, right? Even if you have him, use Bruce Bowen instead, because if you have Wally, you probably got Brandon Roy, so there's just not really any room for Wally in my team. That's gonna wrap it up for our Ruby tier list. Yes, you guys only see 2 players at S tier, but that just goes to show the mid of this Ruby tier. There's not any like great players in my opinion outside of Serge Ibaka as well as Cliff Robinson. But let me know your favorite Ruby card down below in the comments, as well as who is I too high on, too low on. Drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and as always, man, I love you guys. Have a blessed day.